All right. Hey guys, welcome to today's live stream. Hope you had a great start of the week or have a great start of the week, depending if you're in the US. Might be early for you. Let me quickly know in the chat if LinkedIn works, because I can see people on LinkedIn, but I cannot test it somehow. Somehow it doesn't start for me. So does the LinkedIn stream work? Very strange. Does YouTube work? Let me quickly check. I don't know what's going on. Because I don't want to talk like a madman here to myself. I think something's wrong. Something wrong? Oh, okay. Okay, seems to work. Very strange. Yeah, Angkor is here. Hey, Angkor. Sagar. Hey. Hi. Sonia. Hello. Welcome. Yeah, it was very, very strange. Because I can't see that the live stream on LinkedIn started, but when I click on it, I can't get into it. Strange. Yeah, so today, another video about how to become a senior data engineer. I was looking in the last video on Friday in the live stream. We were looking at the first parts. So let me show you what we have been looking at on Friday. Just going to try to not mess up everything here. Okay. So on Friday we were looking at last Friday we were looking at the general topics like advanced data modeling and architecture, big data technologies, advanced ETL techniques, advanced data warehousing and data lake implementation, cloud computing. These were the 5 that we were looking at last time. So if you missed this one, you can also check out that part from Friday. The idea here is the ones in green here and the ones in blue, which I specifically marked here because I found them interesting, are the main categories of what a senior data engineer should need to know. And what we're going to come today is real-time data processing, data governance, compliance, programming and scripting, data security, maybe to leadership and communication. Maybe also we need to do this tomorrow. I need to do this tomorrow. Let's see. So, okay. I hope, yeah, okay. Everything's right? Yeah. Who's been watching the one from Friday? Did you have any questions from Friday? Let me know. Who put one in the chat who's here from Friday, who watched this on Friday? Anybody? Oh, that delay on LinkedIn is terrible. No? Okay. Well, let's just get into the topics of today. So, I think I need to sneeze just for a sec. Okay. So real-time data processing was the one that we needed to look at after the ones after cloud computing that we've looked last time. Thanks for the feedback, Sharon. It's funny, I can't actually see somebody on YouTube here. Okay. Real-time data processing. What's the topic here? A senior data engineer should be proficient in real-time data processing and streaming technologies such as Kafka and Flink. What I did is every one of these, so if you're new here, every one of these I was basically asking ChatGPT what are the main topics for senior data engineers, then it spit out these, and then for each of these I as the list of a more detailed list. And for the leadership, I even, for every one of these topics like team management, I asked a more detailed list. And that's, so what I'm reading is what ChatGPT said, and I'm going to comment what I think, and I hope that you comment what you think about this, because we can like have a chat. This is not fixed, and that's why I do these live streams, so you can give me feedback. All right, so real-time data processing, stream data processing frameworks. That's something I think that already implies real-time data processing, right? That it's not an ETL job or not a scheduled job that you run on a schedule every hour, every day or so, but it's something event-driven. The data comes in and it immediately gets processed and gets put through your pipeline. It says here streaming data processing frameworks. That's the one we are currently now. A senior data engineer should be proficient in designing and implementing streaming and data processing solutions using frameworks such as Apache Kafka, Apache Flink, Apache Spark streaming. The Kafka and Spark is the combination to look for. Kafka as the message queue, Spark as the actual processing of the data in through the message queue. Super cool. Apache Storm says it here, and Apache Storm, for me, Apache Storm is not relevant anymore. A few years I was looking into Storm, but Storm never picked up. The two today are Flink and Spark, where I'm never really gotten into Flink, because Flink, let's have a quick look at Google Trends. Apache, Flink, software, and Apache Spark. Software, and then we're not going to look at Germany, we're going to look at worldwide is this, and not for the last day, but the last, let's say 5 years. So as you can see here, Spark is the big leader here. Flink is more a niche thing. For me, Flink is more niche. Never really picked up that big as Spark. So I will look into Spark here. And again, the combination Spark and Kafka is the one big combination that is very, very powerful, and I used for years. Super cool. Kafka KSQL. KSQL as a sort of a database on top of Kafka, on top of the message queue. Yeah, also very good, very good. Then we have complex event processing here. Complex event processing is a technique used to analyze and process complex events in real time. A senior data engineer should have experience designing and implementing CEP solutions to identify patterns, trend in streaming data. What's the difference here between these? Analyzing patterns, analyzing trends. I think I would mark this screen here gray. This is not really interesting. Data ingestion and transformation, that is a topic very important for a data engineer. We do this all the time. A senior data engineer should be proficient in designing and implementing data ingestion and transformation pipelines that can handle high volumes of streaming data and perform real-time processing and analysis. So that's the golden thing. And the important part here is be able to design, not just implement. Right, the designing part, that is the big part for the senior engineer that has a lot of experience, that knows the different tools. So designing, data ingestion, data transformation, super important. Then we have here real-time analysis and visualization. It's already very connected to this. Maybe let's see what it wrote here. A senior data engineer should have experience in designing and implementing real-time analytics and visualization solutions that can provide insights into streaming data as it's being processed. This is very closely connected to this here. That's right. Connected here. So, I mean, it all falls under ingestion and transformation and streaming processing of data, right? These two very basically have everything in them. Also data analysis. Yes, visualization might be interesting for an engineer as well, but usually more towards the information that is, or towards the statistics of the data pipeline, of the quality that we're coming in here. Data quality and anomaly detection. A senior data engineer should have experience in designing and implementing data quality and anomaly detection techniques to ensure accuracy and consistency of streaming data. That's actually a really big problem that we have as engineers. A lot of the time, data is coming into the pipeline, it's getting processed through, but there are no checks for the quality and you don't get notified if there's an anomaly, which is super, super dangerous, right? Because at some point, either in the source, the data could be wrong, or your processing could do something that's not intended to for, or that you've not intended to when you were coding it. So data quality and anomaly detection, that's a very, very big topic. I think that's important. As an engineer as well, I mean, if you're a professional engineer, if you're a data engineer, not a senior data engineer, you should be able to implement this. But I'm guessing conceptually, as a senior, yes. Low latency data processing, that's for me again. Low latency, that's your streaming data processing frameworks. I don't know, low latency. What did it write here? Senior engineers should be proficient in designing and implementing low latency data processing solutions that can handle high volumes of streaming data with minimal latency. Let's forget about this. For me, this is implied whenever you talk about streaming data processing, right? It's distributed systems and fault tolerance. Yeah. Senior engineers should have experience in designing and implementing distributed systems and fault-tolerant solutions to ensure high availability and reliability of real-time data processing. I mean, this part here, I think we were talking about architecture here. Didn't we talk last time about architecture, frameworks, modeling, graph databases, visualization, advanced ETL. Let's keep this. I think that is an important part here, right? You need to be able to create something fault tolerant. You need to be able to create something that is reliable and distributed. That is a lot connected to, actually, let me delete this here. That is a lot connected to this here, to the cloud platforms for me, because you need to understand as a senior, you need to understand how to do this on your platform that you are, right? Well, let's also put connected in here. All right, and that's already, we're so far into the real time data processing, right? So we had ETL here, we had real-time processing, cloud platforms, warehousing, already like the big ones. We could change actually this. Programming and scripting should be further up here. Let me quickly change something here. Let's take this, let's put this away. Let's take this like this. And this like, come on. This, and then let's put this here back. All right. Because now programming and scripting should actually be over here. Hi, Mohammed. Yeah, what are you thinking so far? Like, are these... Does that make sense with real-time data processing? I think that makes a lot of sense. Yes, some stuff is connected with each other, and we have heard some topics before on Friday. But I mean, this generally overview here, ETL, cloud computing, real-time ETL, ETL and real-time processing, and then scripting next. I think that's important. That is very fitting, right? All right. Afterwards, what do we have here? Programming and scripting. So the idea behind that was. No, I also messed up my document here. A senior data engineer should be proficient in programming languages such as Python, Java, and SQL, and should be able to write efficient and scalable code. You can argue which ones are important. I think for me, from my experience, I'm coming from the Java world, but I would say nowadays Java isn't that super important anymore. You can do so much with Python. So as an engineer, I think you can do most stuff with Python. Of course, if you know Java, Java is a good language, and so it's good to know it. But when I think back and when I think about the tools, everything that I teach in the academy, everything you can work with everything in Python. So SQL. Of course, SQL is important. Is whenever you talk with databases, whenever you query data, put data in, writing SQL queries super important. Is it a programming language? It's a query language, right? It already says the word. It says structured query language, SQL, but it falls under this. So Python, maybe Java, SQL. Should be able to write efficient and scalable code. Super, super important. Hey, Andreas, as a data engineer / senior data engineer, do we need to know system design? Some companies ask during the interview process. Absolutely. I think as a good senior data engineer needs to know how to design solutions. And we were seeing this here in the cloud platforms. We were also seeing this in big data technologies. Like all of these had the essence. Whenever you read this, the essence is always the designing part. So a senior engineer needs to understand, not just have the experience of implementing stuff, but also needs to understand how to design pipelines, how to design platforms, whole platforms, how to design, like what we were talking here, how to design data quality and anomaly detection, how to design streaming data, like how the data is going to flow through my platform, what tools am I going to use, how's the data going to look, needs to understand how to model data and so on. Like the conceptual stuff, the design phase, that's where you need a good senior engineer, and what a senior engineer should be very good at. So scripting, proficiency in programming languages. I think that senior engineers should be proficient in one or more programming languages commonly used data engineering, such as Python, Java, Scala, and SQL. I mean, as I said, Python, yes. Java, maybe. SQL, 100%. But Scala, yes. However, like for me, I've done programming with Scala in Spark. It's super annoying and sometimes for easy jobs. In Python, it's super difficult to do in Scala. As a senior, yes, it's good to know, especially it's relatively easy if you come from Java. But I don't think every engineer needs to know Scala, because Scala is nowadays so limited to Spark. You can think of this on your own or decide on your own what to do. Experience with distributed computing frameworks. I mean, we already had that. experience with distributed. A senior engineer should have experience in distributed computing frameworks such as Hadoop. No, not Hadoop. Hadoop is old school. Almost nobody uses Hadoop anymore. Spark or Flink. We talked about this before, and be able to use them to process and analyze large data sets. I mean, this thing, isn't this the same as like here stream processing framework? I mean, for me, let's mark this gray. This doesn't make sense here. Because stream data processing frameworks, that's the same thing. We were talking about Spark, we were talking about Flink, being able to use them, being able to code. No, not this. This we keep, this we delete. Familiarity with containerization and orchestration. That is actually a big topic. I mean, nowadays, whenever you deploy something, you try to deploy this in a containerized fashion. Because containers are easy to deploy. Images for the containers are very, what's the right word? Very, not easy to create, but you have a very nice process with checks and everything to create images for a Dockerized environment or a containerized environment, and then these images get used to spawn containers. So most likely they're going to mention Kubernetes and so on. What did ChatGPT say? Containerization and orchestration. Senior data engineers should be familiar with containerization and orchestration technologies such as Docker and Kubernetes. And be able to deploy and manage data processing jobs using these technologies. Absolutely. I mean, this is one in the chat if you've used a containerized or a Docker before. If you used containers before, put one in the chat so we see this. Let's do it. Because that's nowadays that's the foundation. That's something you need to know. Let's go. More in the chat if you used containers before. I'm waiting. Let's go. That's not a 1, Mitri. Cube to scale and down distributed systems. Yep. Mohammed says not yet. Extreme cost and tiny saver. All right. So if you've Mohammed, if you've not used it before, look into it. Knowledge of database technologies. I mean, yes, of course, the senior engineers should have good understanding of database technologies such as SQL. I'm guessing they mean relational databases, and know SQL databases, and be able to design and implement database schemas and data models. 100%. To a certain degree, this is also already important for a data engineer, not just for a senior. Because yes, the design part might be more towards the senior, but as a data engineer, you need to understand how does a database model work in the different data stores. That's also what I teach in the academy. That's whenever you need to do a use case or want to build a project, you need to understand this. So it's very important. Let me try to... let's unmark this. Then we have experience with data integration tools here. Experience with data integration tools. Senior data engineers should have experience with data integration tools such as NiFi, Talent, Airflow, and be able to use them to move and transform data between different systems. Airflow, I don't fully agree to use Airflow as a data integration tool because it's more meant for basically management of processes, not actually doing the processing within Airflow. But yeah, that's something where I'm not super big in ETL tools. But yeah, I can see the point. A lot of people use these. Then we have proficiency in shell scripting. I mean, shell scripting is very, very focused, right? Very basic, very near to hardware, to operation systems, and so on. So let's see what it says here. Senior engineers should be proficient in shell scripting languages such as Bash or PowerShell and be able to use them to automate processing tasks. Yeah, you can always argue, should you use shell scripting or should you go and immediately take a look at something like Airflow, where you do the scheduling and where you plan your jobs, for instance, in a Dockerized environment, right? But the thing is always, if you just have one or two jobs and you need to schedule them, it's easier to schedule them through a cron job and through a bit of Bash scripting instead of having to set up a huge system around it that generates overhead, that needs maintenance, and so on and so on and so on. So if you start out, absolutely. But for a senior, I think this might be less important. Let's add a quick text here. Less important for senior. Because you already know this as a professional data engineer. Familiarity with version control systems. Senior data engineers should be familiar with version control systems such as Git and be able to use the manage code changes and collaborate with other team members. Let's mark this gray. I mean, let's duplicate this and let's put in here, should already to be known as a data engineer, as a not senior data engineer. I mean, I don't think a senior data engineer has any more knowledge than a data engineer in there. So, and with that, we're already basically almost through the coding part, right? So the coding part and the architecture part is a lot here in the earlier cloud computing platforms, warehousing, ETL pipelines, real-time processing, big data technologies. Big data. I hate that term here. Advanced data modeling architecture. Right, so now let's look at governance, compliance, security, leadership. For governance, I think that governance generally, let me read what ChatGPT said here for governance. Governance, they should have a solid understanding of data governance and be able to ensure that data solutions adhere to regulatory requirements. Actually, this is a lot connected to compliance. Right? These two are closely connected. I'm not sure if that is good English, but I mean, these two are super important. Who's working with data governance or struggled with data governance before? That would be interesting. Data governance, compliance. Who of you has struggled with this before? Because I have. Like back in the days when I was working at data projects, governance is a big topic because you need to have like data access and authorization topics. You have a privacy topics, which not everybody should see all the data and which data needs to be encrypted and all this kind of stuff. Like, who's already struggled with this? I could imagine that already a few people struggled with this before, right? All right, let's look further. By the way, if you have any questions, put the questions in the chat. I can answer all the questions. Just put it in there and we're going to get to them. Like Mitri said here, Mitri had a few topics. Let's go. So data governance, we already talked. Data lineage and metadata management. That's actually something that is difficult at times, especially in complicated pipelines. A senior engineer should have experience in designing and implementing data lineage and metadata management solutions to track the movement and transformation of data across the organization, right? Because your data might be used in different stages for different use cases. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand where does this data actually come from, what has been done with that data before, right? Also the metadata of data types and statistics of how fast is this coming in, how much data is this per day, and so on and so on. Like lineage, super difficult at times. It's more of a very often a manual work that actually people who create the pipelines need to document everything, need to document the lineage, need to document the metadata. And sometimes it's just actually starting an automated process to extract the metadata from the data, but sometimes, very often, this is not done. So lineage metadata, super important. Then we have data classification and sensitivity labeling. Actually, what's sensitivity labeling? Senior data engineers should be proficient in designing and implementing data classification and sensitivity labeling solutions to ensure that data is properly classified and protected based on its sensitivity and criticality. So that's that's already going into the privacy topic, right? Is this sensitive data? Is this or privacy data, or is this data that is a business data that not everybody should know and is only for the leadership or something, right? Where you can then extract the average sales per day or something, which, right? That's something. And that topic. Then we have data quality management. I think we already talked about data quality. Senior engineers should have experience designing and implementing data quality management to ensure data is accurate, consistent, and reliable. Yep. But data quality, weren't we talking about this before here? Change data, modeling. I'm just looking through this. Okay. A question here. I have a question. Should senior data engineers have DevOps skills, container, CI/CD, and advanced skills of back-end like microservices, distributed transactions, just to focus on business logic? Everything that you've mentioned is important here. DevOps, yes. Containers, CI/CD, we were talking about containers here today we were talking about this. Where was it? Where was containerization? Here, familiarity with containerization. CI/CD, yes, it's also, do I have this here? It's actually not in here, but yes, continuous integration, continuous deployment, stuff like that. The handiwork, yeah, absolutely. The manual stuff, or the stuff that you code. And advanced skills of backend like microservices, yes, microservices as well. We already had microservices here, microservices architecture. That's something. Distributed transactions. I think we had this here, distributed computing. So yeah, absolutely. Not just on the business logic. So That's that. It's because, like, you also, as I said before in this stream, the design part is the big part where the senior shines. Not just being very experienced in doing the integration work, but also doing the design part. And to understand the design part, of course, then you need to know what containers are. You need to know how to deploy stuff. You need to understand backend and need to understand how can you create a microservice architecture or add microservices to your pipelines. Like that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Data access and authorization. That is now we're back at governance. Data access and authorization is something super important. You always get back to this. Senior data engineers should be proficient in designing and implementing data access and authorization solutions to ensure data is only accessed by authorized users and applications. Very important. It's a bit like what we said here, classification and sensitivity. Who's able to, or how can you add data access or ways of limiting the data access or managing the data access and the authorization for the users? Very important topic. Very, very important topic. Data retention and archiving is something interesting because you most likely are not going to keep all the data, or it doesn't make sense to keep all the data. Might also be very, very cost intense to keep all the data. So what data do you need to keep? What do you need to throw away? Are you going to keep all the data in your live store, or are you going to archive this somewhere? Super difficult, super important question that a senior data engineer should be able to answer. A senior data engineer should have experience in designing and implementing data retention and archiving policies to ensure that data is retained for the appropriate period of time and is properly archived for long-term storage, because long-term storage is cheaper than have it in your real-time storage in your database. So what data are you going to keep for how long? And the data that you keep, are you going to keep this in your expensive storage, or are you going to archive this so that it might take longer to access it, but it's cheaper? Should I invest more time in studying DevOps? It's always a good choice. It's always, as an engineer, it's always a good choice to look into DevOps. To start with containers. How do you create containers? How do you put containers into production? How can you monitor and maintain the solutions? Super important. Super important. So keep that in mind. For a engineer, for a senior, or just a professional engineer, very important. Privacy and compliance. Privacy and compliance. That is something I struggled with for months in my early work. Like, it's super difficult because you have all these rules and regulations from the government that you need to actually look into, that you need to apply, that you need to document. So very important. ChatGPT said here, a senior data engineer should be proficient in designing and implementing data privacy and compliance solutions to ensure that data is properly handled and protected in accordance with legal and regulatory requirements. All right. So data privacy, again, we were talking about privacy before here. Privacy is connected to data access and authorization. It's also connected to this one here. But data privacy and compliance is connected to data access, and authorization is also connected to data classification and sensitivity. Without that, it's so that absolutely fits, and that can take a long time. That can take a lot of incremental steps to go over it again, talk with people that are in the legal team, talk with people that are in the privacy team of the company, and figure out is the documentation right, and so on. So this might take a long time. Security and encryption, though, that is something you should be able to deploy as an engineer, as a senior engineer, understand how the security works and understand what to encrypt. What did ChatGPT say here? Should have experience in designing and implementing data security and encryption solutions to ensure that data is properly protected from unauthorized access and attacks as well. Yeah, it's true. So keep that in mind. And as I said, connected to this is compliance. Compliance is very connected to governance. It's more, yeah. Let me read it here. Okay, that was before also what we said. Compliance regulations. These are more regulatory requirements by law. So understanding of regulatory requirements means senior data engineers should be familiar with regulatory requirements that govern the collection, storage, processing, and sharing of data in their industry, such as HIPAA, GDPR, CCPA. So it's connected to governance, but more from the regulatory side. This is where the GDPR comes in, and this is where I think we already talked about. Let's mark this. Let's gray this out here. Retention and disposal policies. Data. That's actually something very interesting. We were talking about deleting the data after some time, and which one to delete, which one to keep. For how long to keep, but actually the disposal is also something important because you want to dispose the data right? Not that you keep it and somebody can actually, or it can be reversed, like put it in your trash on your desktop, and somebody can just do rewind that operation. Right. So let me read, what did it say here? Senior data engineers should have experience in designing and implementing data retention and disposal policies that align with regulatory requirements and that are properly communicated to all relevant stakeholders. That's also something from a privacy standpoint, or from a regulatory standpoint, like certain personal data that needs to go after a certain amount of time. You're not allowed to keep this longer, or if your use case is over and you no longer need it, you immediately need to delete it. So that's where disposal and retention policies for like the legal stuff comes in. A very dangerous topic, let's say. Auditing and reporting. A senior data engineer should be able to create and maintain audit logs and track data usage and provide regular reports to demonstrate compliance with regulatory requirements. Right? This is a lot connected here to data access authorization. Here, that's connected because let me delete this, because for that, of course, requires that data access, data authorization and stuff is actually handled. And then we have encryption and data security. We already had encryption here. Is this the same thing? Yeah. Design and implement encryption and data security solutions that protect data from unauthorized access, breaches, and theft. Let's mark this gray here, because it's literally the same thing, just with a bit of a different text. Privacy regulations. CDPR. Let's should understand the regulation CDPR and the California Consumer Privacy Act. Let me read this completely. A senior data engineer should be familiar with privacy regulations that affect data usage and storage, such as the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and the CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act. I mean, we already, let's mark this gray. We already talked about this before. Well, that's this one. Monitoring and detecting data breaches. Senior data engineers should be able to design and implement monitoring detection mechanisms that can quickly identify potential breaches or other security incidents. Yeah, that's really important. It's more of the design part. I think for the senior data engineer, the data engineer is going to implement it most of the time. We had some other question. Another question is, now people prefer to use CDP tool or on-prem cloud? CDP tool. Customer data platform. Best. What? Sorry, CDP on-prem or cloud. I don't get it. All right, and with that, we're through these. Now, let's take the other ones, or let's do data security and leadership and communication. We're going to do next time. All right. So data security. I mean, we already talked about this. Let's quickly look. Data encryption. We already were talking here. Data security and data encryption. I think that really doesn't make sense. Where is it? The general data security topic here. Data security topic. They should have experience in designing and implementing data security measures such as encryption, access control, data masking. So data encryption, I'm not going to tackle that again. We already talked about this. Access management, we already talked about. Security and compliance, we already talked about before. Network security is more of a hard topic, right? It's more of a design topic of the platform and more of a low level topic. But let's keep this. Threat detection and prevention, we were also talking about this before. Disaster recovery, that's actually interesting. Disaster recovery. The senior data engineer should be able to design and implement disaster recovery and business continuity plans to ensure that data is protected in the event of a disaster or system failure. That's actually something that you need to think of whenever you design a platform, right? If something is happening, how can we recover from this? If somebody deletes our production database, how can we recover from this? If somebody writes in faulty data, how can we recover from this? So super, super important. That's a good point. Let's keep that here. Security auditing and compliance reporting, we already were talking about this before. Should be able to design, implement security auditing and compliance reporting mechanisms that ensure security controls are effective and compliance requirements are met. We had that before. So let's mark this screen because that is actually connected to this, and that is connected to, I think, to this. So let's keep this like this. All right. And then, so we're finished with data security. Now we're just going to keep your leadership and communication. And then we're going to take a look at tomorrow. And for the rest of this stream, we can talk Put any question in here. Let's have a quick chat. That now it's the difficult part is done. Now we can just have a go, and the next time let's talk about leadership stuff. And I'm going to eat a piece of cake here. So put your question in the chat. I messed up my mouse pad. Roberto says here, hey Andreas, thank you for your content. I will enroll in your academy as soon as I finish the course. Nice. Thank you. Very good to hear that you're already doing a course. Would be interesting. I'm taking through Data Camp. Which one are you taking, Roberto? Robert. I'm sorry. Why did I read Roberto? So Robert, which one are you taking? I'm actually looking forward to it more than what I'm doing now. Oh, okay. What are you doing now? Yeah. I actually taking a course. It's already good when people start, and you don't have to take my courses and my academy, but to start, if you start doing at least one thing, like start small. Super important to keep educating yourself and keep scrolling through social media. I mean, the data engineering stuff on LinkedIn is very good. I really like that. We have a lot of cool creators, share good content. Also on YouTube, you find a lot of stuff. More questions? Come on, put the questions in. I have time. If no questions are coming, then I'm going to quit out here. And I'm going to look at something else. Really like your posts. I had some experience in data analysis and want to step into data engineering. What would be the overall 30, 60, 90? What does that mean? 30, 60, 90? No idea. What's that? What's 30, 60, 90? What does that mean? Here. 30, 60, 90 day plan lays out a clear course of action for a new employee during his first 30, 60, 90 days of the job. Specific concrete goals for vision. Yeah. So that's more, I would also say this is more for now that I read this, really meant was the 30, 60, 90 day plan to follow. The idea behind this, I'm guessing, was more for, as they wrote, as you're an employee, new employee to a company, what are you going to do and to learn? For becoming a data engineer, I think 90 days is not enough to become a data engineer. It depends a lot where you're coming from, what your previous knowledge is, what you want to go for. It's super difficult to give you a straight plan. That's why I have so much stuff in the academy, because you should go in there and not learn everything, but take tracks of it and do parts that fit to you. And so Abhishek, I would need a bit more background for this. Would love to learn more about how Snowflake or Databricks fit into data engineering tools. Well, Snowflake and Databricks fit more into the platform part. We actually had that in this here. We actually had that, what we were talking about here, in the cloud computing platforms. And below here was Snowflake and Databricks. Because what the goal with this is you get the data in from a source, and then you put it into somewhere where you can process the data and where you can store the data. And Snowflake and Databricks are very nice for this, because you can just take the data that is coming in, for instance, put it into a Snowflake staging table, and from there you can do transformations, and you can put it into tables, and then you can have users query the data or use the data. And the same thing you can do with Databricks. Although I think because Databricks uses Spark, for me, Databricks is the winner in terms of processing, because because Snowflake is limited to SQL, writing SQL queries, and Databricks has the full power of PySpark and Spark SQL and so on. So that's how these things fit into the whole data platform. I want to know more about Kafka data engineering related guidance. I'm from Kafka admin side. Shouldn't you, as a Kafka admin, already know what about Kafka? I don't know. I mean, once you understand streaming, once you understand how the data flows through the message queue, when to use a message queue, what are the upsides of the message queues, what are some downsides, how to implement it, basically how to get the data in the message queue, and how to then process it in the back. Like, think of it as, once you understand, you have an API on one side, you have the API, then the API takes a payload from somewhere or a information, writes that into Kafka. Then after that, you have your data processing, like for instance Spark, or you have Databricks in the back, where you do Spark stream processing, and then put that into a table in Databricks, and then have somebody query the data. So engineer related guides, I think that's for the engineer. If you're already doing Kafka admin, then you should already know basically most of it. Maybe you're missing the why to use it, when to use it. Basically the design part of the platform. All right. So far for today. Great stream. I'm going to be back tomorrow. If you're unsure when I'm coming back, what you can do is you can go to, let me share this. You can go to learndataengineering.com, my academy. And on the top here, I have events, right? Click on events, and that brings you to a calendar. And here you can see, okay, Tuesday, I'm going to be here same time, 4 to 5, maybe a bit longer, depending on how good the stream is and how many questions I get or not. And I mean, I'm here. You can subscribe to the whole calendar here, or you can just take here an event and activate the bell and put it into your calendar. If you subscribe here, then you will automatically get a, what's that thing here? Very strange, this button. Yeah. So check that out. Whoops. And was great talking to you. I hope you learned something. For me, the senior data engineer topic is a very interesting topic. as it really relates to what I was doing, and always thinking of, okay, how was this influencing me whenever I worked as a senior data engineer, whenever I led my team. So because all of this stuff I struggled with, and like, yeah, super fun. But it's good. I mean, sometimes this whole, where we were talking about compliance and governance stuff, as an engineer who wants to build and build and build and solve a solution, this might often be a hindrance and be the annoying part, but it's needed. All right. So much for today. Thanks for being here. Have a good one, and let's meet tomorrow. Same time. See you later.